This evening, we are looking at the couple Nabal and Abigail. Nabal and Abigail. I'm sure you remember this name from the Old Testament. And two questions we would be looking at as a framework or as a background in our mind. Okay, two questions. First question is, are you trapped in a loveless marriage? Are you trapped in a loveless marriage? Yes, you got married. Maybe you knew each other before, or maybe you didn't know each other at all, and it was an arranged marriage. But now there is no love lost, it's loveless. What do you do in a situation like that? What can Nabal and Abigail's marriage teach us? Second question is, are you an Abigail or are you a Nabal? Okay. Now, the reason why I'm asking that question is, you should not get into your mind to say, all women are Abigail, all men are Nabal. No, no. The thought behind that question is what type of a characteristics are you exhibiting in your life? Are you showing characteristics of an Abigail? You could be a man and you could be showing characteristics of an Abigail, or you could be a woman and showing characteristics of an Abigail. So ask yourself these questions as we go through this study, and let's find some answers for our questions this evening. Now, when you look at the marriage of Nabal and Abigail, we can definitely say that it was a marriage of incompatibles. Incompatibles. In 1 Samuel chapter 25, which is a passage where you have the incident of these two individuals, you find that the Bible mentions Abigail and Nabal for the first time over here. Okay. The Bible describes Abigail as a woman of good understanding. Okay, as a woman of good understanding, and a beautiful appearance. But when it describes Nabal, it describes him as a harsh and evil in his doings. Two contrasting people. One who is smart and understanding, and one who is evil in his doings. So as a result, when you look at these two individuals, you can definitely say they are poles apart. And that type of marriage would definitely not have been very, very happy. Now, there would have been a breakdown in communications a long time back, because the Bible doesn't tell us how long they were married before this incident in chapter 25 occurs. But definitely over a period of time, communications have broken down, because when she meets David and introduces herself to him, she says, "Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He's just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him." Okay. You know, would a person who is having a very strong relationship in their marriage speak like that, of their spouse? Not at all. So over a period of time, communications have definitely broken down. Now you may say, how did she ever get into this relationship at all? Definitely in those days there would have been the arranged marriage, arranged for different purposes, whether it was for money or whether it was for the kingdom, different reasons where the women were given in marriage and they were actually treated more like objects. But Abigail was a good woman of understanding, a smart woman, if we were to say. And as a result, even though her husband name was a fool, behaved like a fool, she did not give up on that marriage. She still stayed firm. That's a good thing in one sense. And on the other hand, we would also look at what happens in marriages where love is lost. What happens in marriages where one person is like this? How long can you bear up with such an individual? Is there such a time when you can walk out of that relationship? Now, remember, oftentimes in marriage, it is, one person who is weak in one area the other person is strong in that area. And as a result, both are should be able to, complement each other as they work towards, unity. But if the negative part of it stands out, instead of seeing that as a strength that you have to help, to build up one another, then you will find that there will definitely be problems. So, are you a Nabal or an Abigail? Are you a Nabal or an Abigail? Okay. So many marriages pair up like this, isn't it? One side, a kind, intelligent individual. On the other hand, a spouse who is difficult and does evil things. Okay. Imagine, if you will, Abigail's life with Nabal. Two people who are complete opposites. Nabal reacts with a prideful emotion, whereas Abigail responds with a God centered discernment. Nabal only thinks about himself, but she considers everyone who is involved in that whole situation. Fortunately for Nabal, Abigail doesn't walk out of such a relationship. She stays with him regardless. Okay. Now, the Abigail can be the husband or the wife. The Nabal can be male or female. Now, what are the characteristics of a Abigail individual? An Abigail individual is often trusting to a fault, easily taken advantage of. Her kindness is often used to cover for the offending spouse, making sure that the reputation of the family is protected. Okay. Outside world does not know it. Why? Because one person is so trusting and the other person takes advantage of that. The Nabal individual, the Nabal individual is frequently controlling, dominating, manipulative, dominating, manipulating, controlling. That's the type of a Nabal person. Okay, wants to have the final say, wants to make sure that that person's viewpoint is accepted, is the only one that is accepted, and oftentimes also take the other individual who is very trusting, manipulate the other person for his or her own advantage. Now, such type of a situation is definitely an unhealthy situation. And this is also an abusive marriage. It is also an abusive marriage. In certain cases, there may be physical abuse, but in certain cases, there may not be physical abuse. But there will definitely be this type of an emotional abuse, an emotional blackmail, a manipulating, and the other person falls a prey to that. Oftentimes, the Nabal person is an expert at outward appearances. He maintains a stellar reputation in the community. He treats his Abigail well in public, but only the Abigail knows what Nabal is like behind closed doors. So the world doesn't know what's happening in the home. One of them bears it silently. When they are out in the public, they are like the most loving couple together. But at home, it is a total different story. Unfortunately, the Nabals of this world want to control their Abigails. Are you in this type of a relationship? Are one of you like Nabal, one of you like Abigail, and you're wondering, where is this all taking me to? So let's go into the first person, Nabal. What do we know about him from this particular passage? Okay, the first thing that we know that he was by a blood relationship, a descendant of Caleb. I remember Caleb and Joshua, individuals were strong in faith. Unfortunately, his descendant, is not like that. Yes, he would have been a hardworking person because he has a lot of wealth. But oftentimes, if we really look at the passage very closely, it seems to be that he has also got that wealth at the cost of somebody else. It could have been, Abigail who brought in some of her wealth, or it could have been because of the shepherds who labored so hard. He was not maybe paying them too well, like he didn't look after David and his shepherds, and he got wealth, he manipulated them and made his own money. He was definitely not a good person. He was rash in his behavior, rash in his talk, and he also had a definite drinking problem, as you notice later in the passage when Abigail comes home after meeting up with David and settling the issue. She finds him in a party, drunken state. She doesn't tell anything to him that particular day. And then the next day breaks the news to him that she has reconciled the situation with David. And as a result, his blood pressure shoots up. He gets into a stroke, and 10 days later, he dies. Second important lesson that we learn about, information rather, that we learn about Nabal, is that Nabal was not only a fool, he was the worst kind of fool. Worst kind of fool. Because he gained all his wealth from the efforts of others, but yet behaved as if it was all his and didn't want to part it with anybody at all. Okay. A man who could feast like a king when others around him would go hungry. A man who was not willing to offer the basic hospitality to an individual who asked him when there was a feast going on during the festival season, the harvesting season. At that particular time, shepherds from David's group came asking for something. He said, nothing doing. The worst kind, because remember, hospitality in the Near Eastern culture was considered as one of the highest virtues. But here, he showed no hospitality whatsoever. So you can say he was the worst kind of villain. Thirdly, he was non-approachable. He was non-approachable. Nabal made himself non-approachable to his wife and also to others of his own household. And one evidence that we find in this passage, which shows that he was non-approachable, is that he did not know that David and his men had helped his shepherds in the field. His shepherds could not tell him because they said, he's such a scoundrel. How can anybody speak to him? Okay. So his shepherds could not approach him. His own wife could not approach him. And he had no communication with anybody around. Okay. So he didn't even know that David had been looking after or helping in securing and giving protection to his sheep. And the way he treats those servants itself shows how unapproachable he was to people. Definitely a very, very negative quality for any individual. Fourthly, we find that he was impulsive. He was impulsive. When David's messengers presented their request to Nabal, one would have expected that he would make them sit down, find out who they were, find out where they were coming from, find out, what they had been doing, so that he gets that information and then decides, to give them their due share. Or the least he could have done is at least check up with his wife and say, hey, so and so has come in, visitors have come in. Why don't we give something to them? Nothing at all. No consultation with anybody, no talking with anybody. Very impulsively, he insults his David's messengers. Okay, he puts his own family in grave danger by insulting them. Think for a moment. The words that he uses, he's basically saying, who are you? You are just a servant who has run away from his master. Okay. Think of what he's saying. David is the anointed king. And just because Saul was after him and now Solomon has died, so he thinks that he can do anything that he wants to and treats him with such disregard and insult him. So Nabal was not just a fool, he was a proud fool because he didn't bother about anybody else. Even if his own family was going to be in danger, he did not bother about it at all. Sixthly, we find his moral foolishness was the failure to appreciate his wife's wisdom. At least, he should have had that much of, sense, if you were to say. Okay, he is a foolish guy. His wife, the Bible says, was a person of understanding. He should have at least listened to her, listened, to, some communication. But his household servants, if you notice, sum up his, belief system when they say in verse 17, he's such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. No one can talk to him. And this is a servant speaking about the master's worthlessness to whom? To his own wife. Okay. Wife was approachable, master was not approachable. And the master they treated with disdain. They said he's a worthless guy. Okay. How did all this come about? Because he said, I don't listen to anybody. Now, sad to say, there are a lot of people who are like that. It could be the man, it could be the woman in the marriage relationship who says, I'm the boss, I don't listen to anybody. Even though God has put them in a marriage relationship so that they can help one another, grant wisdom to each other to make a joint decision. A lot of times, no consultation is done, wrong decisions are done, decisions which can also harm the family. They're not bothered about it whatsoever. It was John Stott who said, pride is your greatest enemy, humility is your greatest friend. Pride is your greatest enemy, humility is your greatest friend. Seventhly, there may have also been a little more unattractive side to his personality when we look at his name. The word Nabal means a fool, okay? But if you notice, Abigail, when she speaks about Nabal to to David, she mentions over there, folly is with him. Folly is with him. Okay, folly is with him. That is what she mentions. Now, this word folly that she speaks about is a word that is correlational with sexual offense. Okay, it is not just a word that says, "Hey, this guy is a fool," but a fool because of his bad attractions sexually, fornication or adultery or rape, or attempted homosexual rape. All these words that are used there in the scripture is also linked up with this word folly. So definitely, he was not just a fool, just mentally. Even in the sexual realm, it appears that he has, misused, his body for wrong reasons, which the Bible does definitely forbid. And the Bible nowhere mentions that Abigail and Nabal had children, even though Abigail was able to conceive, because when she got married to David later on, she did conceive. Okay. Now let's look at who was Abigail. Who was Abigail? If Nabal meant a fool, Abigail's name means, my father is joyous. My father is joyous. In other words, when Abigail was born, the father must have, been very happy, and he must have said, "This is the joy of my heart," and named her as Abigail. Okay. Now, her ancestry is not mentioned at all in Scripture. Is not mentioned at all in Scripture, though a lack of information, especially about women in the Old Testament, but their lineages are often not there because the Hebrew wife was often characterized as being a part of the husband's major possessions. And you remember the relationships that was there between husband and wife, even when they are walking on the roads, the husband could not have his wife by her side. The wife had to walk a couple of feet away. And that is how women were looked down upon. But Abigail, if you notice, was a smart person. She was smart, rich, and beautiful. In fact, when the Bible introduces her, the Bible introduces her as a person of good understanding first before saying that she was beautiful. In other words, her understanding was much more, if you were to say, than her beauty. The focus was not on the beauty. The focus was on the fact that here was a person who was definitely smart and understanding. But sad to say, she was definitely not a happily married woman. She was not a happily married woman. Maybe, she got married hoping that this guy will change. Maybe, but nothing really changed, isn't it? A lot of people, even today, they get into a marriage knowing how the other person is. People have cautioned them. They say, no, no, don't worry. We love each other. Everything will work out well. Or maybe they are in an arranged relationship, they have maybe met the other person, interacted, and they assume that things will change after marriage. But once they have got married, they find that the other person, has not changed, and sometimes maybe even hostile to Christianity. Or it could be that one person came to know the Lord after marriage, and then they are in this loveless relationship. So, whichever situation, it may be in, to live with a person who is a selfish individual is a very, very difficult proposition, isn't it? To live with a person who is a selfish individual is a very difficult proposition. But oftentimes, you will notice if one person in the relationship is selfish, the other person would definitely be more selfless. To have two selfish people in a relationship is going to be very, 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 very tough. Okay. So the Lord, in His way, balances things up, but that is no reason or an excuse for a selfish person to continue to remain selfish. Okay. Now, Abigail, in all this situation, she still tried to be an ideal wife. Now, there would have been a lot of suffering for her. You know, Marriage would have become even more and more less communicative. There would have been maybe very bad times when his impulsive nature would take over. But Abigail tried to be an ideal wife, despite his personality flaws. No matter whatever he did, no matter whatever mistakes he did, Abigail stood by her man and found a way to protect his social and business interests. Okay, but in no way did she become like him. In no way did she give in and say, okay, if he does this to me, I will also give it to him in the same measure. Sometimes people do that in a marriage relationship, and it breaks down the marriage even more. She didn't submit to her husband's stupidity. Rather, she protected her husband and his interests, and she took the initiative when he was unable or unwilling to act, and even apologized for his rude behavior. Now, this does not really mean that, she was a very submissive woman. She did not, say anything against him. Whatever he said, she said, okay. No, that's not what it really means, because you notice here, when she finds out that David and his men are going to come to kill all these individuals because of Nabal's behavior, she doesn't keep quiet. She stands up to fight for the safety of her husband. She could have said, okay, Lord, I thank you that you have answered my prayers. He's going to come and kill this guy who is a fool. No, that was not her response. Her response as an ideal wife was still to protect her lawfully wedded husband. And the way she does this, is a unique thing, which shows that she had everything in control. In other words, in the midst of all the emotional trauma she would have gone through the years, her brains were still active. She was able to have everything in order, and she was able to put together that meal basket of 200 loaves and the bottle of wine and all the other things that were there together to make sure in that short span she was able to get the things together. So it basically means she had everything in control. She had not gone berserk in the midst of the emotional trauma. Her mind was still very much in control. Okay. So are you facing difficult circumstances or conflict? When the world around you seems to be falling apart, it is hard to believe that everything will turn out all right, much less that God could accomplish a breakthrough beyond your wildest dreams in the midst of it all. Think for a moment. If you put yourself in Abigail's shoes, did she expect God to do something? She said, God, you put me in this relationship. I'm going to be a faithful wife in this situation, trusting you for it. And the right time came. She did not want her husband's death, but the Lord worked it out. And then she had a new beginning after that, much beyond her wildest dreams. The whole situation that we have talked about so far is recorded in the book of First Samuel chapter 25. After Samuel's death, David and his men, 400 men are plus are in the wilderness, fighting for their life, as it were, because Saul is still after them. And in the process, David's and his people protect Nabal's sheep, and now they're in good relationships. Then, when the time comes for the celebration in Nabal's household, David sends his people over to say, "Hey, since we have been taking care of your sheep, and I'm sure that you would be willing to give us a few of the celebration dishes so that my men can have a good feast." But he refuses, insults him, and then Abigail steps into the situation, runs across to David, bows before him, says, "Look here, I'm so sorry on behalf of my husband. He is a fool. Think of yourself, think of what God has done in your life, and think of what God is going to do in your life. He's a fool. Why are you also a fool?" In so many words. And then gets David across to her side. And David recognizes that he was also impulsive like Nabal. He should not have been impulsive like that. And that is how the whole thing changes. That's the situation that we find in 1 Samuel chapter 25. You can read the whole details in that chapter. We will not read it right now for the lack of time. So now what can we learn? What can we learn about this situation? What can you do if you are in a situation like this? Not the easiest of times, but remember, the hardest of times can bring out the best in people. The best in people. Instead of wallowing in self pity and defeat over her circumstance, she acted courageously and used great wisdom when she was faced with a threatening scenario. She could have just wallowed in it and says, "What is life all about? This is what my fate is. There's no hope for me." No, she did not wallow in self pity. She did something, even though she could not change Nabal. She was willing to make sure that she was not going to be changed by the situation and still stay firm. First important lesson is that Nabal was a wise woman in a toxic relationship. A wise woman in a toxic relationship. To say that she married into a toxic relationship will definitely be an understatement. Her marriage was tough, but Abigail stayed strong. Abigail stayed strong. In those days, when brides were given to whatever man her family chose, even in the bad marriage and tough life situation, Abigail stayed wise. She observed the situation, she knew what she could change and what she couldn't, and she used her intelligence to make choices to protect her family. And this is an important key. If you are living in a loveless relationship, if you are living in a toxic relationship, observe the situation, know what can be changed and what cannot be changed, and make the right decisions, make the right choices to protect the family. Secondly, Abigail was caught up in the rising tension. As it is between themselves, Nabal and Abigail, they are in a bad relationship. Now, because of his behavior to David's men, situation has got worse. And she is caught up in this particular situation because David says, put on your swords, and 400 men went up with David. And as soon as the servants got to know about this, okay, they feared for their lives and they immediately ran to Nabal's wife Abigail and said, please do something about it. Okay. So she is the one who's caught up in it. She was not responsible for that tension, but she's caught up in that tension. And sometimes that can happen, isn't it? It's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault, but you're caught up in it. What do you do then? Do you throw your hands in the air and say, that's not my fault, that is his responsibility? No, your family is in danger. So she definitely does something about it. She was not afraid to act quickly. She was not afraid to act quickly. We see quick reasoning and sound judgment in her character, for she knew just what to do. She knew just what to do. She could have thought, okay, this is what God is going to do. He's going to kill Nabal and I'll be at peace. No, that's not what her response was. Her response was that she showed her integrity. She chose to protect her husband not because he deserved it, not because he was good, but because she was good. Let me say that again. She chose to protect her husband not because he deserved it, not because he was good, but because she was good. Okay. She couldn't think of anything else but God. God, you are in charge. My family is at, lives are at stake. What should I do? And she immediately went over and did something about it. She immediately did something about it. Oftentimes, there would be a position which would say that a woman will win over the husband by not saying anything at all. Whatever he says, whatever he does, whatever abuses is thrown your way, just take it. Just take it. Sometimes, people counsel women like that. And oftentimes women will say, how long? How long? It is getting too much, too much. When the time comes, there is definitely a need to be silent. There's also a need to act. And that's what Abigail did. She was not afraid to act quickly. Okay. Fourthly, she was a woman who responded instead of reacting. What will have reacting be? She could have rushed to the husband and said, look here, you fool, this is what you have done now, and put our entire family at stake. She could have shouted at him, she could have cursed him. That will be a reaction to his fault. But she responded. She responded. Instead of using harsh words, she springs into action, prepares this gift basket for David and his men, and responds in a much different way. Words are important. Responding in the right manner is important. But oftentimes, when you're in this toxic relationship, when tempers are flaring, it is easy to react. It is easy to react. Reacting would be the style of Nabal, the fool. Abigail, the smart, understanding woman, learns how to respond. And that's a lesson that we can learn. Fifthly, Abigail was also a trusted woman, a trusted woman. The members of the household felt safe informing her of the disastrous response of the husband. Okay. She is the one who acted as a buffering system. The household, people were afraid of Nabal, you know, but this woman, this lady, Abigail, acted as a buffering person, buffering system. The household felt safe coming to her to share their needs. So That means that she was approachable. People could trust her. She had an influence. She had an character that the servants of the household had looked at, and they had gained her respect. Without gaining this respect, they would have even been fearful to address her, isn't it? So these are the characteristics that we can learn from her. She was a trusted woman. She was approachable. Even the servants could come to her, and that is what will ease a situation, which that is what will ease the tension. Reaction is only going to fan the flames. Responding in this trustworthy manner is definitely going to ease situations. Sixthly, Abigail dealt in truth. She did not mince words. Once she had gathered provisions and loaded the donkey, she hastened towards David's encampment. She met David and his army on their way to kill her entire household, jumped down, bowed to the ground, and told of her husband, "Let not my lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him." Now, a person may say, should a wife speak like that of her husband? Okay. Remember, she was not speaking evil of him. She was only telling the truth. She was calling a spade, isn't it? And she was doing it for Nabal's own protection and preservation. She was not telling him and not telling David, look here, he's a fool, go and kill him. No, no, that's not what she said. She acknowledged before David that yes, he's a worthless guy, he's a fool. And she said that because that was the truth. And she said that so that his life can definitely be protected. Okay. She spoke to David, speaking about his iniquity as her own, even though she was not guilty of his actions whatsoever. She was willing to humble herself. Seventhly, Abigail had good timing. Good timing. As soon as the servants told, immediately she set things up. Okay. The Bible tells us that Abigail did not even tell her husband that she was off to save the household. She knew that the right actions had to take place and proceeded. And it was pointless. And in fact, it may have been very dangerous to try and reason with an unreasonable husband. Now, again, a question may arise here. Did she step out of line by acting without his knowledge or authorization? Okay. Now, here again, a man who is not leading his household as he ought to must change. But the wife is not expected to sit by and watch her husband destroy their family in the meantime. In Abigail's case, she couldn't even tell him what she had done when she returned home because this guy was totally drunk when she got back home. Okay. So, yes, she acted without Nabal's authorization, but it was because of her quick response. As David says, this was the Lord helping her. Good timing was definitely there. And this all shows that Abigail stayed calm under pressure. Calm under pressure. Try and put yourself in Abigail's shoes. 400 people plus David are coming marching down with swords in their hands and are out to kill. And here are you, the lone woman, with all those goodies, if you were to say, to meet with these 400 tough looking individuals. Okay. Would it have been easy? Definitely not. But one woman armed with food, armed with intelligence, experience, wisdom, and beauty, one woman riding on a donkey, intent on saving her husband, showed that she was calm under all that pressure. Yes, you may have a loveless marriage. Yes, it could be a toxic relationship, but you can still remain calm if you have seen things from the right perspective. So, what are some of the lessons that we can learn from Abigail? Okay, number one, don't let fear hold you back. Move forward in God's courage and wisdom. Don't let fear hold you back. In 1 Samuel 25 and verse 18, we read that Abigail lost no time. Lost no time. No matter how difficult or threatening the situation, God's power within us is greater than we can ever fully see or comprehend. Okay. We do not know how it is going to work out, what God is going to do. And as a result, sometimes because you're so fearful, you don't do anything. Fear can put a person to stand still, but don't do that. Abigail showed great wisdom in acting quickly, swiftly, and speaking well to David. A lot of situations could have been nipped in the bud in the initial stages itself of a toxic relationship, if only one of those members who were in that relationship, who was being manipulated, did not allow fear to hold them back, but move forward. That could have changed the whole situation. But a lot of times, because of fear, you keep it in, keep it in, keep it in till one fine day it just bursts out. So instead of hiding or covering, Abigail moved forward towards the danger, knowing that God was surely with her, and doing so saved her household. Some relationships, when these things get, into very deep trouble, either the whole relationship breaks down, or one of them may commit suicide, or one kills the other individual. All those type of scenarios don't have to be like that. Right in the very beginning itself, if you don't allow fear to hold you back, but move forward and be brave, be brave. It would not have been an easy task for her to confront David and his 400 men, but Abigail was willing to do that. Even knowing her bravery is also seen, knowing that when she came back, Nabal would definitely ask, "Where did you go? What did you do?" Okay. And then she would have to face his violent temper. Okay. She would know that, but she still was brave to go ahead and do that. And that's an important lesson. Sometimes a person may say, what will be the consequences? And as a result, don't do anything about it. But if you notice, when she took that step, God also looked after her. God spared her from Nabal's wrath, because the scripture tells us that he had a stroke and 10 days later he died. Thirdly, be humble and kind. Be humble and kind. Seek peace with those around you. Seek peace. She had the courage to shoulder the blame for something she did not do, and she begged for forgiveness on their behalf. And God used that particular moment to help David to recognize how wrong it would have been for him to take revenge. Now, this was the turning point for David. This was the turning point for David when he saw this woman willing to humble herself. That was the turning point. So, similarly, even in a toxic relationship, if you are saying, "You did this, I will show you, I will also do this to you," things are going to get bad. But if, on the other hand, the grieved party is willing to seek peace, live in peace, be humble, acknowledge, then you'll find things can get better. How do you do that? Cultivate a life of wisdom. Cultivate a life of wisdom. Okay. How did she show her wisdom? She goes up to David, explains to him, okay, explains to him, even speaking about how God had used David in time past, to use that sling to kill Goliath, okay. So she reminds him of what God had done in the past for David, you know, against Goliath. God gave him the strength. So why are you getting upset about this little fellow, puny fellow, this fool like Nabal? She also reminds him about the future, the fact that God is the one who has ordained him to be the next king. So don't mess things up. That is what wisdom is all about. Look back from your past and learn from it. Look into the future and acknowledge God who is there in charge of the future, and don't mess up your present. Fifthly, Our words and actions are powerful. Our words and actions are powerful. So look at the big picture. Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Grievous words stir up anger. A soft answer will turn away wrath. Living in a toxic relationship, loveless marriage, a soft answer will definitely turn away wrath. How much will the other person get angry if you have a soft answer? There is definitely going to be a limit. But if you're going to also give in like measure, use grievous words, the anger is only going to increase. She looked at the bigger picture of the story, which was very significant for her to understand that God was building up David for a time in the future, that the Lord Himself was fighting for David. Just as much as He helped him in the past with Goliath, He is the one who's there with him in the present as well. So, this was her mindset. Yes, she was going through her own struggles, but she believed that the God of the past is also the God of the future. For the present to have that right understanding, things are in control because God is in control. So I would not let loose. I would not allow my words and my actions to display that I don't believe that God is in charge. I'm in charge. I have to do something. Sixthly, a true warrior is loyal and faithful, thinking of others before themselves. Before themselves. She was not thinking about herself at this stage, isn't it? Because to be with single woman in front of 400 men with swords, definitely, she was not thinking about herself. She was pleading on behalf of her household, including her husband. That is what a genuine person is all about. Loyalty to God is shown in the loyalty to people around you. Thinking of others before yourself shows understanding. Thinking of yourself first shows that you are a fool. Number seven, remember, God will fight for you. You are never alone. God will fight for you. Did God fight for Abigail? Yes. Bad relationship, she must have been saying, what can I do? Where are you, God? But God worked through Abigail, not only spared the others in her household, but finally, even after this, you find that David marries Abigail. How did she do all this? She was faithful in her lifestyle constantly. Even though she was trapped in a loveless marriage, even though she was trapped in a loveless marriage to this fool, yet she was loyal, she was trustworthy, she was steadfast, she was reliable to her husband, she managed her home very well, she managed the servants very well. That is where she showed her faithfulness. And as a result, God blessed her. So look and live in the big picture. You may be facing a difficult situation, a hard struggle, a difficult battle. You may feel like you have been left on your own. But remember, God is always with you, leading you, giving you His wisdom and strength. Okay. There is a future. There is a future. So don't think that your marriage is over. There is a future. Trust God for that. Okay. Five takeaways from Abigail as a biblical woman. As a biblical woman. Abigail, if you notice, her intelligence was more important or superior to her beauty. Her beauty today oftentimes trumps intelligence. People maybe look at only the external beauty, but for Abigail, her intelligence was superior to her beauty. 1 Samuel 25:3, it says Abigail was an intelligent and a beautiful woman. And she's a biblical woman that can be looked up to. Okay. She was not the perfect definition, of what a person today will say that here's a submissive woman. Okay, but she put herself in harm's way to correct the mistake of her husband. And she reminds us that submission is not just a blind submission. Okay, you need to understand, you need to be smart, you need to be intelligent, you need to know when to be remain silent and when to act as well. Secondly, a biblical woman does not submit to her husband's every thought. Okay. A biblical woman is fully capable of thinking for herself and making decisions on her own. When Nabal makes a big mistake and his whole family is lives is at stake, she does not hesitate to take action. Without Nabal's knowledge, she fixes the problem, even though he was completely unaware of it. So a biblical woman does not say, look, that's the husband's responsibility. If he gets the whole family in trouble, that's his funeral. No, she decides to take action. Okay, that's an important thought over here. It's not a question. Submission is not to be a slave. Submission is to be an individual who acts when necessary. Okay, so that's why the third important lesson is biblical women are capable of taking action of their own accord, of their own accord. If she had gone directly, to the king, to say, look at this is what is happening, it would have caused her own death. Okay, and it could have also put her own life at stake, if Nabal came to know and he got angry. So knowing that her life was at stake, if she didn't do something, she also made sure that she didn't act rashly. She used her wisdom. She made this gift, made the necessary, essential items, because David's men had come and said, look here, we want something to eat, and Nabal refused. So she makes sure that she has taken sufficient for his men to eat. So she's capable, biblical women are capable of taking action of their own accord. They are smart individuals. Fourthly, strength, courage, and bravery are qualities of a biblical woman. Each woman is different, definitely. Each man is different, definitely. Everyone has their own gifts, but here we find, the qualities that are seen in Abigail. She used the gifts that God had given to her, even though she was stuck most likely in a very unhappy marriage. Okay, even in this situation, she used the gifts that God had given to her to change that situation. And this is why we can be assured that the Lord will use people of all types for his purpose. No matter what situation you are in, no matter what gifts you have, instead of looking at what you do not have, if you look at what you do have and trust God, then he is the one who is able to change the situation. The person may not change, but he is able to change the situation. So in the meantime, how do you live then with a difficult spouse? How do you live with a difficult spouse? How did Abigail cope with this difficult and a person called Nabal? First important lesson, be humble. Now, to be humble is a powerful position, is a powerful position. She was a rich woman, the Bible says. She was beautiful, she was smart and intelligent, but she still remained humble. She didn't set her heart on her riches and was not led by fear of losing her material possessions. Her trust was not in all that. Her trust was not in all her riches or beauty or wisdom. She was humble and she was willing to put her trust in God. That is what, uh, that is the first key important way in which we can live with a difficult spouse. Secondly, don't yield to fear. Don't yield to fear. When her life and everything she knew was threatened, she didn't yield to fear. Instead, she acted in wisdom. And through all the years of the toxic relationship, she humbled herself before her cruel husband time and time again. And in all this time, God was building character within her, causing her to grow in respect, among her own household, even in the midst of adversity. So, situation may be tough, but don't yield to fear. Don't give up. Thirdly, there's the negative part of it. The positive is be humble, be brave, don't yield to fear. Don't nag. Don't nag. She didn't nag her husband, even though she had the right to say to his face, "You fool, you're going to get us all killed." How many times have I told you to do something about your temper? You've again done it again. No, she didn't nag him. She didn't say again and again, "You're doing the same thing." No, she, that was the truth. When she had to tell that, she called a spade, to David because she wanted to protect. But in that relationship between themselves, there's no passage which speaks about she directly speaking to Nabal in this manner of nagging. Nagging is not going to help, in a tough relationship, in a toxic relationship. Fourthly, be bold. Be bold. An attitude of humility and honor and respect gives a person boldness. And the boldness is seen when she was able to walk up, to this person, David, with his 400 men, and still be able to talk with him. How was she able to do that? Where did she get her boldness? Definitely her faith in God. She recognized that David had been anointed by God. In other words, she had that relationship with God to know about David, to know about what God had told about David. And even though David was keen on destroying all these people, she was willing to trust God, that God was able to change the heart of David. And that's what he definitely did. Sixthly, be forgiving. Be forgiving. Humility, honor, respect, and wisdom don't mix with bitterness and unforgiveness. If we are having a respect in society, it is because you have that attitude of humility. You have that attitude of a forgiving nature. A proud individual is not going to have that respect. So if a person is forgiving in that relationship, it's going to build up better communication. It's going to ease your living with that difficult spouse. Seventhly, focus not focus on the person's need and not on their anger and threats. Don't focus on the anger. Abigail's life teaches us that love can triumph over anger, that often we do not understand a particular event in our lives, even if we think we know everything at all, but sometimes we don't know the reason for that anger. Okay. So look at the person's need and think about doing good. Jesus said, isn't it in Luke's Gospel, chapter 6 and verse 28, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you. Okay. Now we are living in a world which says, don't put up with that. You don't deserve that. You need to give them a piece of your mind, But when we look at Abigail's life and her example, we find that even as she was willing to focus not what she was going through, but focus on the need of her servants, need on Abigail and on Nabal's life, which was in danger. Through that, she was being built herself up, so that when she became the wife of David, she would have also been able to guide him as the queen. Number 8, be consistent. Be consistent. Okay. Being married to Nabal would not have been easy, would not have been easy. But the Bible describes Abigail as a beautiful and intelligent, and that is what she continued to be, never missing a beat and saving lives till the very end. Why? Because she recognized she had a role to play. She recognized that she had a position of influence. She changed her surroundings rather than allowing the surroundings to change her. And that's what consistency does. Consistency is not okay. Today got angry, today, tomorrow he said sorry. No. Consistency is being willing to be humble, not yielding to fear, not nagging, being bold, having faith in God, forgiving, focusing, on the other person's need at all times. Once this consistency is there, you are going to change the surroundings, even though the person may not be able to be changed. Number 9, leave the future with God. Leave the future with God. You do your role, that which God expects of you. It's a time to be silent, be silent. It's a time to act, be willing to act. But leave the consequences, leave the future to God. And God is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ever ask or think. Now, I'm sure Abigail never in her wildest dreams would have thought that this is how this is all going to end, with Nabal's death and she being married to David. Never in her wildest dreams. Remember, you may be going through a tough situation. You may be an Abigail, you may be a Nabal, you may be living in a toxic relationship, a loveless relationship. Be faithful to God. Don't give up, because God is the one who has brought husband and wife together. He is the one who's going to strengthen them as well. And as you trust Him for your future, not opting out. Now, opting out is easy, divorcing is easy, but when you're willing to stay together, trusting God to work things out, we find that God in His sovereignty will definitely do that. Let me close with a couple of application questions this evening. Number 1, what are your thoughts about Abigail's difficult marital situation? What are your thoughts? Do you think it was easy for her, tough for her? Do you face similar situations today? Secondly, where have you been like Nabal, acting like a fool? Examine your own lifestyle even this evening. From the time you got married, have there been situations that you have been more like Nabal than Abigail? Have you been giving Satan a foothold with your anger? Are you impulsive? Impulsiveness, bursting into anger, is not good for any relationship. But by doing that, we are actually giving a foothold to Satan. Fourthly, are you a teachable person? Is there a situation where you need to listen to the loving correction offered by another? Some of the best counsel we can receive should come from our husband or wife. Are there other questions of the Holy Spirit is putting in your mind? Are you open for correction? That's what it basically means. Are you a teachable person? Number 5, have you been contemplating revenge, or are you like Abigail, able to show discernment to diffuse the collision course? Are you constantly scheming, manipulating, or are you able to show discernment of how you can diffuse the situation? Number 6, are you unapproachable like Nabal, or are you approachable like Abigail? Number 7, do you think Abigail was unsubmissive and rebellious when she did what Nabal refused to do? What was her reason for her actions? Do you think submission means not giving advice to your husband? What do we learn from her about giving advice to a man? Number 7, do you have, number 8, do you have the courage to do what you know is right in God's eyes, even when your closest friends advise otherwise? In other words, do you live your life by what the world is saying or by what God is saying? Number 9, does your tone of voice, a facial expression, a body stance arouse anger in your spouse? These are nonverbal communications, isn't it? How can you use words and body language that might calm down an angry situation? And finally, number 10, you have choices to make now as you grow up. Nabal had a bad reputation. Abigail had a good reputation. Now, what steps will you take, from being a Nabal to being an Abigail? God does not want you to continue in that toxic relationship. God wants you to do something about it. Abigail acted swiftly. What is the response that you will take this evening? Shall we bow our heads in prayer together? Father, we thank you, Lord, for this study on Nabal and Abigail. We recognize, Lord, that situations like this existed then, and it continues to exist even today. And you have also shown us of how in the midst of this situation, your name can be glorified, of how in the midst of all these pressures, a person can still remain calm. We pray, Lord, that as you enable the searchlight of your word to shine into our hearts, to enable us to be honest with ourselves, to find out whether we are like Nabal or whether we are like Abigail. We pray that you'd help us to make necessary alterations, corrections in our lives so that our lives can be fruitful for you. Our marriages can be not only successful, but our marriages will bring you glory and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.